Hey everyone, GuardianE here with a quick update video for the global version of Destiny Child. We're actually on the eve of the anniversary, the first year anniversary for global, and in order to celebrate and kick off the anniversary, they have included one of the most generous events, easily the most generous event that they've had on Destiny Child since its release. So I wanted to highlight this event in particular for those of you potentially new players out there that have hesitated about jumping in or deciding on the best time to jump in. This is the best time to jump in if there was any question or any doubt. And if you had any inkling to play the game, I would strongly encourage everybody out there to at least download, start up the game, go through these events at least, so that you have an account with this stuff on it. But I wanted to again highlight this event because essentially they're giving away up to, I think it's 7 6-star childs, 6-star units that will be maxed out at level 60 and uncapped to +6. So this is the Lisa's extra lessons that we have here. We have Lisa shaking her finger at us and teaching us a lesson. And more or less what this means is that over the course of the event, and we'll go over it together, but just as an example here, you can see that the event itself is not going to, or the lessons themselves are going to be broken up by days. So you have 7 lessons, 7 days, and each day is going to encompass, you're going to have a couple of quests to complete during that day. So for example, this first day here, fight 3 battles in story mode, any difficulty, use 30 stamina in total. That'll take all of 10 minutes to do. So clearly this is geared towards newer players to give them a nice little jump start, and it is a huge jump start, I have to say. So just to give a little bit of context to potentially newer players out there that aren't familiar with the leveling and evolving and uncapping process in Destiny Child, but basically a unit that is a 6-star and uncapped to +6 means that you have pulled at least 7 copies of that unit. So if it's a 5-star that's out there, you have the +6 means you fed 7 copies in for uncapping purposes, and beyond that, even getting them up to a 6-star means that you had to feed them multitudes of similar rarity childs in order to get them to get awakened up to a 6-star. So it's a huge, long, drawn-out process to get these units up to +6. And a lot of them are the most viable at +6. For a lot of them, you really need them to be at +6. And they haven't skimped on the selection either, and we'll go over that in a little bit. But basically, this cuts so much time off of a new player needing to advance their account because they will instantly get access to top-tier units that are fully out-of-the-box limit broken and ascended and uncapped so that they can use them straight away and kind of cut to the chase and get right up there with the current meta. So the period goes live tomorrow on the 28th, so on Thanksgiving Day, and it extends all the way until December 26th, so the day after Christmas, basically. However, the event only lasts for 12 days starting from your first login during the event period. So for newer players that want to join in anytime during that month period, they'll have 12 days starting of the first day that they register their account and join in to complete all of these and get all of the rewards. So you do have a full month to dive in if you're hesitating or want to join in a little bit later, but you have that entire window to come in. But as soon as you log in, create your account, you only have 12 days to actually complete all of the lessons. So as you can see here, basic and grade reward. Basic reward, a 6-star child, level 60, uncapped to +6 of your choice, from the reward list for each lesson. So that's important. It's your choice. It is not random. You can pick any one of these. The final grade reward, you can receive the final grade reward depending on the number of lessons you've completed during the event. Then to get your rewards, you have to submit your assignments within the event period. You cannot claim the reward that you haven't received after the event period end. So right here is listed all of the childs that you can get for each specific lesson, and I do want to go over them because the choices that you make here can be kind of critical for your account. I just want to make sure that you're making the most informed decision if you're a newer player or even if you're an established player, what you really ought to be going for potentially. Obviously, if you have a character in this list that you really like design-wise, that you just love, that you want, you just want to be able to use them and max them out at +6, then go for them. I mean, I think character over meta any day of the week. But if you want to jumpstart to your account and you want to pick really what's the most powerful option for a starter, then that's what we're going to go over today. So Lesson 1, Day 1, we have here Aurora, Syrinx, Mott, Ulka, Jupiter, Moa, Lanfei, Chang'e, Epona, and Werewolf. So for newer players in particular, I would say that Chang'e is a no-brainer. So we have Chang'e right over here on the right-hand side that I have displayed and ready to go, so you can check out kind of her animations. But basically, Chang'e is meta-defining and irreplaceable. There aren't other units. There are some units that kind of mimic what she does, at least to some extent, but nobody does it as well as Chang'e does. And she's just been powerful since the very beginning of the game. She's been a unit in the game since the very beginning, and she basically just makes every team better. Even in team compositions where she's not supporting or not being supported as a water unit, if you toss her onto other teams, she just makes every other team work better. So she basically increases the charging speed for every other unit on the team, which means that more or less it increases the overall effectiveness of your team no matter what it is. So what that basically means is she'll make all of your other units do that much more damage no matter what they are. So, so basically she makes every team better no matter what. And that's why she's just so strong, and she just hasn't been toppled. She just really is that good. She's that good for PvE, she's that good for PvP, and for sure getting her and picking her will just make your life so much easier. But of course there are also other very powerful options. So we have Mott over here as well. So Mott is a healer, and she is an amazing healer. Absolutely one of the best healers in the game. Arguably the best healer in the game. And what she provides your team is sustainability. She keeps your team alive through thick and thin. Your team would be hard pressed to die, quite frankly, if there weren't timing components or timing constraints on certain levels. And more or less, you know, her drive skill resurrects a unit as well. So that in tandem with her healing basically keeps your team healthy, and even if one of your units dies, if she sets off her drive, she resurrects them and then heals them. So again, this mod is so good at keeping your team sustained and alive through a variety of different events, challenges, and PvE. PvE specifically, I will say that just because PvP has its own set of challenges as far as healing is concerned, but for PvE, Mott covers a lot for you. The only reason why I would recommend Chang'e over Mott specifically is because there are other healers in the game. So Mott, while she's arguably the best at what she does, and again I say arguably because I think some would argue that there are other healers that they would prefer, there are other healers in general in the game that you can use, that you can substitute Mott for, and they'll function within a team. So again, even though Mott is amazing, it's not as though she's irreplaceable. And so that's again why I rate Chang'e a little bit more or higher than Mott in this context. Speaking of other healers, we have Syrinx over here. So Syrinx is another good choice. She's primarily PvP based, and part of the reason for that is because she provides invulnerability for a number of units of her allies on a team. And the reason why that's important is because there are certain debuffs that you can face in PvP that will essentially limit your ability to traditionally heal. More specifically, we're talking about Moftet. Moftet, one of my favorite characters in the game, but her drive essentially and a lot of her attacks just shut down healing, and so that's where Syrinx comes into play, because Syrinx can create a Fortify effect, which will create an invulnerability buff on your allies while healing them. So that ultimately kind of circumvents that whole debuff that you see pretty commonly in PvP. There's also Ulka over here, who's looking pretty tiny. Again, pretty PvP based. If you're interested in PvP specifically, Ulka may be a pretty good choice for you. Early game, he was absolutely devastating on a PvP team. It hasn't been quite as crippling lately, but he's still a very strong contender if you want to go for him. Jupiter as well is extremely strong at high uncaps, and you're getting him max uncapped, so you don't really have to worry about that. But basically, he's a debuffer, and he also provides bleed damage, which is incredibly powerful. You can also stack certain soul carters on him to enhance that bleed, but that bleed damage is very substantial. Now, I will say that almost all of these characters are available in the regular premium summon pool, and what that means is that you can pull them from summon tickets, from 5-star tickets, from your daily pulls, from your gold summons, stuff like that. You can get almost all of these units. And for a veteran that's been playing for the past year, it's very likely that you have a lot of, if not all of these units already +6'd. And if that's the case, you may be looking for options other than kind of the traditional top-tier tried and true units. And in those instances, what they have included is both Werewolf and Moa. So Werewolf and Moa are both, we see them in summon pools every now and again in limited banners that come back, but it's not as though they're in the general summon pools. So unless you summon for these units specifically, or you've used blood gems on their specific color banner, you probably don't have either of them, or you don't have high end caps for either of them. Moa was given to us for free, but Werewolf was not given to us for free, I don't think. So basically, if you're a veteran player, you may consider one of these two, just because, again, it's very difficult to hit either of these two at +6, for somebody that doesn't summon for them specifically. Now, I will say neither of them are that good, especially when you consider the pedigree of the other characters on Lesson 1. But it's just something to consider if you've been playing the game for a really, really long time, already have most of the units in Lesson 1 uncapped already. You have the option of these two because they would be difficult to get to +6 anyway. For me personally, I might be going for Fray just because she's in the regular pool, but I don't have high uncaps on her. And it'd be nice to just have her at +6. She's actually a pretty darn good debuffer. So she basically reduces the fever cooldown, I think, of the opposing team, the opposing side, and it's just strong overall. So she's another good option for those of you out there. But I'm debating personally between Fray and getting either Moa or Werewolf. Again, just because getting these particular units at +6 is it's a much more risky endeavor. You're definitely not guaranteed to get any of them at +6. Now, I will say that Lesson 1 and Lesson 7 both feature native 5 stars versus 4 stars that are upgraded to 6 stars. So Lesson 1 and Lesson 7 definitely are the most important choices that you would be making throughout the course of these lessons and days, this event. And the reason for that is that 5 stars are the highest rarity, the most difficult to pull in the game. So as you can imagine, getting 7 copies of those can be a little bit of a difficult prospect, especially for a newer player. It's not really that feasible. So Lesson 1 and Lesson 7 definitely the highlights. A native 5 star is always going to be stronger when uncapped and maxed out than a 4 star that's uncapped and maxed out. Not to say that 4 stars aren't useful, and Lessons 2 through 6 all feature 4 stars that are uncapped again at 6 star and +6. So we'll still be going over the useful choices for those, but Lesson 1 and Lesson 7 are definitely the most important choices that you'll be making for your account. The rest of the units you can probably get over the course of just pulling generally in the game. You'll get multitudes of copies of those 4 stars, and eventually +6 all of them over time. So Lesson 2 features all Water Child, so they're all water units that are 4 stars, and the 2 standouts here are going to be Elysian here. As you can see, she's got a cute little animation, and Sonnet. So these are actually 2 water attackers. You can never have too many attackers in your barracks, in your box, so to speak, because for world bosses, for example, you need upwards of 20 units to fill it out in order to attack the raid boss. So it's events like that that lend themselves towards having, you know, multiple water attackers, multiple fire attackers, multiple wood attackers, and so that's where these 4 stars can really be useful. So Elysian and Sonnet are both water attackers that are very useful. They both inflict poison. Elysian's probably a little bit stronger overall in terms, especially at +6. But if you like the design of Sonnet, I mean, you can certainly go for her over Elysian. But I think Elysian's probably the clear choice for Lesson 2, again, just because she acts almost like a mini Eve. Eve is a top-tier water attacker that is featured on Lesson 7 that we'll be going over in a little bit. But yeah, my recommendation would probably be either of those choices. Next up on Lesson 3, Day 3, we have the Fire units. So of these units, these are again all 4 star, native 4 stars. I would suggest that Frisia, who's featured here, is probably the best unit out of all of these. She works really, really well against certain raid bosses and world bosses. She has a defense debuffing effect, similar to Jupiter that we covered in Lesson 1, although it's, I think, a fixed amount, which has its uses, especially on the lower level or the lower ranking difficulty bosses. Before it kind of ramps up and scales up, Frisia definitely has some uses, and she's definitely very, very powerful, very useful indeed. And then we also have Yuna over here, who is a fire attacker, and she's just very strong, especially when you pair her with Side, with Dione Side, who boosts and gives the double edge to fire attackers. So she's definitely pretty powerful in that respect. So I would definitely go for either of those two as far as a fire unit for Lesson 3. So Day 4, Lesson 4 features wood units, and of these 4-star, native 4-star wood units, my recommendation would be Amor or Tisiphone. Amor is this archer right here. Tisiphone is this soldier that's featured right here. And both of these, again, are attackers. Tisiphone, actually, since at the very start of the game, I didn't have a solid wood attacker at all. I actually had to rely on Tisiphone quite a bit, and she did a great job. So again, these are both great options to use or select for your wood option for Lesson 4. So yeah, nuts to bolts, I think my recommendation for wood Lesson 4 is going to be either Amor or Tisiphone. I think both of them would do a great job on your team to supplement your wood damage. So of the native 4-star light options for Lesson 5, I just wanted to highlight Victorix here, who is pretty darn good. You also have Hercules. Hercules is a tank that, as a 4-star tank, he actually is pretty serviceable. He's not the best. I mean, he gets, I think, pretty easily replaced, but he's actually pretty decent as a tank overall. And then we have Arato over here as a 4-star healer. She's pretty decent. Not bad at all. You can definitely use her, so that's an option available to you. It's just that there are other healers that you can certainly go for. But if you're not getting a healer from any of the other picks here, you may want to choose Arato here just because she does fulfill that healing for your team where you might not have it otherwise. So for Lesson 6, which is the native 4-star dark unit of your choice, really, I wanted to highlight Morrigan over here, as well as Artemis. So these two choices in particular, I think, are the standout. They're both attackers, both dark attackers, and in the early game, it was relatively rare to get dark attackers, actually. And both of these serve that function pretty darn well. And again, they'll service your team extremely well if you need additional dark attackers on your team to supplement. They both dish out good damage, especially for native 4-stars, and can round out. Obviously, they get overshadowed by a lot of the really powerful 5-star dark attackers in the game, but all the same, these are definitely some pretty powerful candidates that you could choose for Lesson 6. Now, another great selection is Melpomene. Melpomene actually provides a relatively unique buff to her allies. It basically boosts crit damage, which is something that you see on 5-star Pantheon. It's used to great effect on certain team compositions, especially ones that focus on manual play. But yeah, I mean, Melpomene is a great choice as well because she does have that sort of unique buff that you don't see commonly on a lot of allies. And at +6, the boosts that she does provide are actually fairly comparable to Pantheon. Alright, so here we finally are, Lesson 7, which is another native 5-star that comes at 6-star +6. And this is a wide selection of really, really powerful units that you have at your disposal. Right out of the gate, first up is Eve. So Eve is arguably right up there with Chang'e as far as one of the best units in the game. She is an amazing, amazing water attacker. She inflicts poison and high levels of poison, which basically does damage over time for every single action or every single hit that the opponent takes, which is absolutely ridiculous and stacks with other damage over time effects. But basically, that poison alone is one of the reasons why she's so strong. She has just great stats in general, and with that poison, that means that even if you push her against a grass boss where she has, a disadvantage, that poison can inflict so much damage over time, especially when you have fever times active and things like that. It stacks. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, and it lasts for 3 whole turns, and that's 3 whole turns of the enemy's actions. So the enemy has to take 3 whole actions before that poison dissipates, at which time they've probably been poisoned again. So you're looking at basically them being poisoned the entire duration of the battle because Eve is on the battlefield, and she is that good. I mean, she really is. She's an extremely powerful choice. I cannot stress that enough. Along with Chang'e for any new player out there. If anything else that you take away from this video is for a newer player to just pick Chang'e and Eve, you'd be pretty much set. I mean, you'd be perfectly fine. Grab a healer like Arato from one of the others, or build up a Lita, for example. Lita is one of the best healers in the game and is a 4-star, so she's easily accessible. But I think out of the gate, if you're hesitating on who you want to choose and nobody stands out to you as an excellent choice, I think Chang'e and Eve are probably, most people would recommend them as the optimal choices here. So yeah, Eve is definitely very strong. Next up, we've got Dana, who is absolutely one of the best units in the game, one of the best defenders in the game, top tier as well. The only place where she doesn't shine, I would say, is world bosses, whereas both Chang'e and Eve excel in every single game mode. But Dana is still extremely good at keeping your team alive. Her slide skill puts up a shield for 5 units on your team, and most team compositions, or traditionally the team composition is 5 units, the exception of that being world bosses, like I was just talking about. So she basically puts up a shield for all 5 of your units for a pretty prolonged period of time, a very powerful shield as well. And by the time the shield dissipates, she basically it's her turn again, and she can activate the slide and put up another shield. So, if you take a look at the top tier 5-stars, you have Eve and Chang'e, who I think their damage output together, paired together, is off the charts. You take a look defensively, Mott and Dana makes you basically unkillable. So the only issue being with Mott and Dana is that it's situational in that you can't use it. It's not as effective on world bosses, for example. And then furthermore, later stages in the game, it's not just about surviving, it's about doing damage, and eventually you'll get whittled down or fevered and things like that. But yeah, I mean, Dana definitely belongs up there in the upper echelon, the upper tiers, as a selection for potential new players as well. Next up, we've got Mars here. Now, Mars is another defender, I think not as universally powerful as Dana. However, where Mars excels is world bosses. So I think for newer players, definitely you don't need Mars. But for established players out there that don't have Mars, she can really help you out in world bosses because her ability activates a shield for every unit on your team. And because it doesn't have a condition of the number, that means all 20 units on your team for World Boss gets that defensive buff. So that's why she's so good for World Boss and a top tier character for World Bosses specifically. Next, I just wanted to highlight Fray. So Fray is a dark attacker, one of the best dark attackers in the game, if not, some would argue, I think, the best dark attacker in the game, especially at high uncaps, and obviously you get him at +6, so can't be more uncapped than that. So if you're a fan of Fray and you're a fan of the character, I mean, he may be an optimal choice for you if you just want a dark attacker. Definitely, I think for newer players, you want to stay away from these choices, but I think for established players that don't have him, maybe an option for you if you're looking for it. And then finally, for veteran players out there, I just wanted to highlight Morgan. Morgan was a Ragna boss, one of the earlier Ragna bosses that we got, and was summon only, and then never entered the general summon pool. So because of that, you can only really get her whenever she appears on a random banner that pops up, or through blood gems. A lot of people have her because she was a Ragna boss, but getting uncaps for her is kind of difficult, and she is a very strong fire attacker. So if you like her design and you want to use her and uncap her, then the best chance for you to get her max uncapped might be this selection right here. Another option is Charlotte. So Charlotte was summon only and also never entered the general summon pool. So this is another opportunity for you guys to get her. Again, if you're a veteran player, she's not available in the general summon pool. And then Guardian Chang'e as well. Guardian Chang'e, the ascended version of Chang'e, although funny enough, not really as powerful as the original version of Chang'e. But any of these three options are actually pretty good for veteran players just because you can't get uncaps for these characters very easily. Because you can't get them from 5-star tickets, you can't get them from your gold summons, you can't get them from your daily summons, you can't get them from random events or from pulling on limited event banners that show up. So the only time you can get these are when they're featured on a specific banner, and because of that, it makes them exceedingly difficult not just to get, but also to uncap. So getting them at +6 is a pretty huge boon. But unfortunately, none of them are really that powerful. I think out of the three, probably Morgan might be the best. To be completely honest, she is a pretty powerful fire attacker. Guardian Chang'e is alright as well. Charlotte, a little bit hit or miss. I think she was intended to counter certain defending units out there, like Dana, because she does enhance damage against shielded opponents. But at the end of the day, none of them are really meta-defining by any stretch of the imagination, but they might be nice to have at +6 for veteran players out there that may not have the option of pulling on their individual banners when they actually come out every now and again. And that pretty much wraps up our overview of Lisa's Extra Lessons, one of the kickoff events for the first year anniversary of the global version of Destiny Child. Launches tomorrow, or I guess it would be today when this video comes out, on Thanksgiving Day. So let me know in the comments below if this was helpful for you, and let me know in the comments below what you ended up choosing for each of your lessons. I'm curious to know what you ended up going with for your leveled up 6-star fully uncapped to boost your account. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to leave us a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more Destiny Child content. We thank you all so much for watching, taking time out of your day to spend with us. We really, really do appreciate it. And until next time, let's keep on slacking.